We're closing up our July theme of authentic power. And today is moving from wanting power to being power. And that was a perfect example when you are simply in the zone of being the power and presence of infinite spirit. So we thank you so much, Gratitude Choir. And I want to let you know we will have a prayer wall today. So the practitioners that are here and the people that are here with a certain prayer request. I simply want you to know that we'll have it after the talk today, because what I'm speaking about today is about the power of prayer. And not just the 5-step prayer we use at the InSpirit Center and our Centers for Spiritual Living, but the prayer when we commune with a power greater than we are. It's about using that power to become the guiding force in our lives. And I know, as Marguerite so beautifully read this morning and shared with us, we are powerful beyond measure. Can you just say with me, I am powerful beyond measure?
I am powerful beyond measure.
And you know what? Miracles aren't just happenstance. Miracles are what we're here to do and be and become, bringing the invisible into form. So I am a miracle maker.
I am a miracle maker.
That's where we stand. That's who we are. And I believe this journey and evolution of life is about simply becoming and standing in the power we're meant to be, the power from which we're created. We are made in the image and likeness of God, spirit, creative potential, love, goodness, harmony, peace, and we're just here to awaken to all of that we can live into it. Now, authentic power, I know, I think the first time I read it was about 1989. Gary Zukav wrote a book called The Seed of the Soul. How many of you have read that? It's a pretty standard book in our teaching. And he spoke of authentic power. And authentic power, let me read to you his definition. Authentic power is when our personality, which we would call our human self, aligns with our soul, which we would call our spiritual self. And we let our soul guide the way. That's authentic power. We may call it co-creation. We may call it divine partnership. But it's about when we can truly align with our the greatest part of ourself, which is still evolving into total recognition, but when we can align with that and let that part of us evolve. Sometimes it takes a long time. I know what Kirk mentioned, the Supreme Court's decision that's been long awaited for marriage equality. It finally came. And I know the InSpirit Center and the Centers for Spiritual Living have stood behind and supported marriage equality for so long. And we stand right here and right now with our LGBTQ brothers and sisters, both in the United States and in the world, as we move towards a world that holds that ideal of justice for all, that holds the idea that every man, woman, and child is created equally. Now, it doesn't mean we live in a homogenized version of life, but it means we celebrate diversity and we honor all opinions, and we're here to support each other on the path. Now, I don't think that we get all the good news that's happening in the world. At least for me, I see a lot of things that are happening that just are scary. Terrorists, random shootings of beautiful people in loving churches doing Bible study, crazy corporations doing crazy things. My friend Gail Minogue, who's a numerologist and an astrologer and science of mind practitioner too, she said this is a time of constructive deconstruction, where things are just breaking apart that they can rise again in a better way. But I know, as I think 15 of us stood on the steps of the African Methodist Episcopal Church on Wednesday evening, really kind of a impromptu gathering of the interfaith leaders, the Muslims, the sheiks, the Jews, the Mormons, the religious scientists, and many where the spiritual leaders got to speak a word. And you know what? It's all the same. It's all the same when we can let down the walls of judgment and defensiveness. I believe the reason we don't live in that place of authentic power is because we feel a pain of powerlessness in a world that seems to have gone crazy, chaotic, wild. You know, how can I make a difference? How can I do anything? Do you ever feel that way? And we start shrinking. How can I do something? And we start feeling powerless when we are truly powerful beyond measure. Yet we get in our minds, our human minds, that we're not. So instead of focusing on the internal, authentic power, which is the creative essence of our being, we start focusing on the external world. And we try to manipulate and control the things around us so they make sense to our limited mind. Are you with me on that one? Some of you? Manipulation and control? Okay, well, you don't have to admit it. But I just was guessing that we like to make order and sense there because we haven't aligned here enough to understand. We haven't aligned with that power enough to understand what true power really is. Acceptance and love and harmony. Now let me tell you, Gary Zukav, who wrote the book Seed of the Soul and talked about authentic power, I was reading about him, and he, before he wrote his book, he served in the Vietnam War in the U.S. Special Services as a Green Beret. So he knew about external power, but he also knew what it took to make sense of senseless things. And so we're here today to learn about activating that power within us. As Marguerite shared from Ernest Holmes, we live in this essence and energy that we call mind, we call God, we call infinite potential, unlimited creativity. We live in that essence and energy, and all life is energy, and everything is made of the same stuff. And thank God we're all such different expressions of that stuff. Those are the first two steps of treatment is God is, I am. And let me just say, if we're having a tough day, does that ever happen to anybody else? Those days where you just can't quite align with anything, we can just really be in that place, just quiet, and enter into the present moment, because that's the only place power really is. It can't be in the past experience or the future. It's right here. Align with that present moment and just say, breathe in, God is, I am. The first two steps of treatment to get us back in that place of understanding and knowing who we really are and why we're here. Ernest Holmes said, the person that has the most power is the one who realizes the divine presence is everywhere. The one who realizes the divine presence is everywhere and works through a universal law of mind. Mechanical. So here's this creative power that works through this mechanical, dependable law of mind. Those are the ones that have the most power. And he went on to say, this was the secret that Jesus had. The secret Jesus had. Now, in the Gospels, which tell the life of Jesus, Jesus performed many miracles and many healings, miraculous things, because he knew the power and presence of God was right here, right now, in, through, and as him, and he knew he had that power. Now, if we truly look at this power and how we use it, it begins with awareness and recognition that there is a power. We have to know that first if we want to be in authentic power. And then we have to be aware of where we are. Now, there's just a very simple level of consciousness or level of mind that we can kind of see where we stand at any particular time. And I would guess most of us here kind of flow through those different levels of consciousness. The first one is when you think you're a victim and life's just happening to you and there's nothing you can do. Has anybody moved completely through that yet? Okay, good. The second one is, oh my gosh, you realize there's a power. It's still out there. And you can tap into it at times and make things work, like getting a parking place. You can get things when you tap into this power that's out there, or you can also use it when things are really tough and you tap into prayer. Those two stages, you still got the power out there. And then there's time when you realize, oh, this is the stuff I'm made of also. And you realize this power flows through you. And again, you tap into it a little more regularly, but you aren't quite in sync with it because there's still the ego still holding on. The human self still wants to judge the world by the five senses, and you're still holding on. But you use the power a little more. The last place is when you embody this truth that God is I am. That's when we take the saying that I've said every week that Ernest Holmes in his radio program started with every single week. There's a power for good greater than I am, and I can use it. And when people asked, how much of that power can I use? He said, as much as you can embody. And that last step is as me. When we realize that we're all in, we have the power of the universe right here within us. God does not play favorites. There's no partiality in the mind of God. The sun shines on all alike. There's no one separate from that. We create the separation. You see, when we try to manipulate and control this outer world to our specifications and likings, we create walls of separation. Instead of opening the doorway to oneness and harmony and goodness, we create those walls of separation. I remember when Kirk and I had the Angel Store in San Juan Capistrano, people of all ages and cultures and faiths would come in and tell miraculous experiences. It didn't matter how they prayed or who they prayed to or how old they were or where they were born or what color their skin was. They had miraculous things to share. And there was a common thread that ran through all of those sharings, and it was the power of faith. I think one of the most wonderful stories of Jesus in the Gospels is when there was a woman who had been terribly sick for 12 years. She'd been hemorrhaging and sick and couldn't get well, but she knew that if she touched the cloak of Jesus, that she would be healed. She didn't need his word. She didn't need his physical touch. If she just touched that robe. Well, at that time, touching the robe of a rabbi was highly prohibited, but she didn't care. She knew that. And there was a large crowd, and she went up and she made her way the best she could through the crowd, and she touched his cloak, his robe. And Jesus felt a flow of energy, and he turned to her and he said, "Daughter, it is your faith that healed you. Now go in peace and be healed of your disease." It is our faith, and this is what our practitioners and ministers know, that we do the training because this power, this use of this power can be taught. It's teachable. Ernest Holmes said, teach, practice, practice, teach. That's all we're here to do because we're moving towards this authentic power. Practice, teach, teach, practice. And it's teachable. It's teachable. We can learn how to use this power. When Jesus selected his disciples, he selected those that were teachable. The 12 disciples, those that were teachable and those that had the willingness and the intention to go off and teach after he was gone. He was very selective. And so that power that we have to use is teachable, but we must, for those people that come to us as practitioners or ministers to do the healing and do the prayer, it's about, you don't need to have faith that you, if you're coming to someone to pray for, you don't have to have faith that you can do it on your own, but you have to have faith that there's a practitioner, a minister, a person, someone there that can know the truth different than you can right in the moment, that can know a greater truth for you than you can hold for yourself. And it is through that faith that healing happens. It's through that faith. So we have stories of healings, and we are a teaching, healing ministry. We believe in the power of prayer to heal. We believe in that universal law of mind that gives back to us what we put into it. And as Marguerite said, if we're focused on limitation, lack, powerlessness, judgment, if we're focused on all that, we're not creating the goodness that's possible in our lives. In the book of Acts in the Bible, it talks about the Acts of the apostles. Now, Jesus collected these 12 disciples, and 11 of them, Judas kind of failed and went off on his own, but 11 of them went on to teach Jesus' message, to teach the message of healing, to teach the message of possibilities and miracles, which is what we teach. The miracles of life are present here and always. And it tells the story of Peter and John and Philip, who do healing lame and sick, and they do their work, but they also went off to teach others and had their own disciples. Practice, teach, and practice. That's what you and I are here to do, even if we slip back. Even if we forget at times, then we go and do our practice and get our teachers to help us. But that's what we're here to do. There's 2 stories of Peter that shows the embodiment of spirit, what happens when we claim our authentic power. He had his disciples, and one of them was a wonderful woman, and her name was Tabitha, and she did charity and good works in the world. She was a good woman, and she fell ill, and Peter couldn't come to help her, and she passed. And they prepared her for burial when Peter got there. And he had to put a little extra time and energy into this, and he went to his knees, and he sat in silence, and he prayed. He just prayed. And then he said, "Tabitha, get up." And she did. And when people heard of this healing, they were like, "Oh my gosh, we want to see Peter." And so they lined the streets of Jerusalem with cots and mats of people that were sick and needed healing. And they said, "We just want to touch Peter's shadow." They didn't need to have the whole healing process. They just wanted to touch the essence, the presence, the energy in their life. And when they touched that energy, when Peter walked through it, it said all were healed. And I believe for us, that's where we're going, is that you and I are here to be beneficial presence in the world. I simply want to read to you a quote by Ernest Holmes from one of his later works. He said, "You and I, as we meet people, I know there should be a healing power emanating from us, which will heal them without our even knowing it." That is authentic power. When we can stand in a place and know that we bless and support and love, we add goodness to whatever we are and wherever we are. I want to close with a poem that's just calling us to step into our greatest yet to be, that place we might call home, where the heart is, the place where we know that life, spirit, joy, goodness is in our heart. And it's a poem by Juan Ramon Jimenez, and it's translated by Robert Bly. I am not I. I am not I. I am this one, walking beside me and in me that I do not see, whom at times I manage to visit, and whom at other times I forget, who remains calm and silent while I walk, and forgives gently when I hate, who walks with me and where I am not, who will remain standing when I die. For each and every one of us, this is a call to step into a greater essence and power of who we really are. An opportunity for us to claim and embrace the miracles and goodness that we are here expressing, to honor and recognize them. The truth I know for you, as the truth I know for me, is we are powerful beyond measure. We are miracle makers, and we are here for the good of all. I support that in each and every one of you, as I support that in myself. I say thank you for being on this journey with me. I love and appreciate each and every one of you. And so it is.